Hey guys, how are you this morning? We want to welcome you to another episode of the KB article. We're super excited today about our guest. Our guest really aligns with what we're trying to do and bring to our audience, where we're trying to optimize the growth and financial well-being of those that we serve. And in this case, it's our listeners, listeners from the small business world, also individuals just interested in good stuff from mindset to business to tax planning to accounting, bookkeeping, those sorts of things, but all geared towards optimizing your growth and financial well-being. So that said, just welcome my co-host, Kyle Kinsler.
Hello.
How are you, Kyle?
I'm well. All
right, man. And our esteemed guest, Dalton Campbell. Dalton, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great.
Well, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Excited
to
have you here. So you got the nice background and love what you got in store for us here today. So
yeah. Dalton, where are you from, man?
I'm from Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Born and raised?
Born and raised. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, are you a Virginia or Virginia Tech fan?
I'm a Virginia fan.
Okay.
So football season's a tough time. Basketball season's usually a little better.
Yeah.
Remember Ralph Sampson? Wasn't he a Virginia guy?
Yeah,
that's before Chad's time, but yeah, he was before Tim Duncan. It was before Tim Duncan. There was Ralph Sampson.
He's still around.
Is he really?
Oh yeah, he goes to like local games in Charlottesville. He volunteers here in the community. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
He's massive.
Tell him hello.
Hey, Dalton, before we get too dialed in, man, tell the audience kind of what it is you do. I know you're in financial advising. You're focused on small businesses. It aligns really with our North Star. Our mission is optimizing financial growth and well-being for those that listen to us or work with us. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how you work with small business.
Yeah, so I'm a financial professional. I'm with Cetera Advisors. They're an independent registered broker-dealer. So they're a member of FINRA, SIPC, and they offer securities and insurance products. And I do all my planning through them. And so, I've been in the industry. I was telling Kyle, this is my 8th year. And when I first started, it was anybody who had a heartbeat I wanted to connect with and try to, see if they needed insurance or whatever. And, as I started to get a little bit of success and some clients and a little bit of a rhythm, I really started to focus on what's kind of a niche or what's a group of individuals who I feel like I can really stand out with. Mm-hmm. And at the time it was real estate professionals. And to this day, most of my clients actually are real estate agents all over the country. But real estate agents are essentially self-employed people. So I also work with a lot of self-employed customers. Sure. So 80-90% of my clients are self-employed in some fashion. I just felt like our industry does a good job of capturing assets and selling insurance, but we don't do a really good job of giving advice that actually means something, like, why is it important to pay your quarterly taxes so you don't have penalties? Or why is a budget really important? How do you even make a budget? Like basic stuff like that, that self-employed people struggle with, that sets them back. Right. And then we can get to the investment stuff and all the fun stuff. So it just kind of was a focus for me to try to get in front of the right clientele. And then it's just kind of taken off from there. And I enjoy it. I'm self-employed. I mean, I have my own tax challenges and my own stuff that I solve every day. And so I do this myself. So it's easy for me to advise on things that I'm already doing myself.
So we're kind of in the same boat with the same people that we're talking to. As Chad and I, we're basically help the small businesses grow and groom them and try to, put them in the right direction. It's not about selling or what it may be, but just kind of helping them with the tools that they need and speaking that same language, everything. Mm-hmm. So how did you get on the path before that? What was your what did you do before?
So I'm only 31. So this was right out of college. Basically, I was a personal trainer for 1 year when I got out of college, and it was fun, man. But I felt like I just worked around everybody else's calendar, was not making a lot of money. There was a lot of turnover to clientele. And I was, very quickly, I was like, okay, I I don't like the business side of this. I like designing plans, but I
Right.
can't charge people 50 grand for a plan. So, I had some clients who were self-employed. One of them was a real estate agent. And one day, like her card didn't go through or something. And she was like, that's weird. There's $200,000 in that account. And it was a debit card. And I was like, what do you do?
Ooh.
Like, and I was just curious. I was like, what do you do? She's like, I sell real estate. I'm like, maybe I should sell real estate. It's personal training. And we kind of got on the topic of just self-employment and having a flexible schedule and all that stuff. And I liked it. I just knew I didn't want to sell real estate for sure. And so, at the time I was reading a lot of like Tony Robbins and stuff. And so I was like, hey, I could probably be a financial advisor. He seems like he's convincing me. So maybe I can, convince some other people. So
I'm great.
I'm all into it.
Well, hey, we work with a lot of small businesses, so it's interesting that you're kind of in that same, target group. Now, you're focused more on real estate, it sounds like, but, small business is small business when it comes to dollars and cents in many cases, right? In terms of strategy. So a lot of small businesses don't typically, they're not forward thinking in a lot of instances. And then they work with CPAs that, aren't very proactive. And you probably run across this before. Well, my CPA handles that. Well, my CPA handles that, right? My
CPA handles everything.
Right. CPA handles that. Well, they don't. They handle the compliance mechanism at the end of the year once it's too late to make a decision. How do you kind of overcome that with prospects or with your clients? To get that CPA engaged, or at least get their mind to shift and say, I need to be forward looking instead of looking back to just compliance stuff.
It helps to be in the financial services and doing what I do with licenses that I do have, because I can easily illustrate, like, a CPA can advise you on things that you can do to reduce your taxes, but they can't make investment recommendations. They can't tell you what type of account to set up, how to structure the account. They can't tell you what stocks to buy or when to sell or what kind of capital gains exposure that someone's going to have and how that's going to impact the rest of your portfolio. So they can give you advice, specific advice. They can do all the compliance-based work, which is literally what you pay them for. But when it comes to actually like structuring the long-term plan, decisions that we make today, is it going to impact us 30 years from now? If we dump $100,000 into this investment vehicle, is that going to impact us in 30 years in a negative way? So should we even do it? Those types of things are just, CPAs just don't have time for it. It's just not their business model. And so I'm sure there are CPAs out there who, charge 10 or 15 grand a year and do all this comprehensive planning. And that's great, but that's 1% maybe of the entire industry. And so you really need a CPA who's licensed and can do all that stuff for you and does a good job. But you also need an advisor or someone who's focused primarily on self-employed or on, structuring and strategy as well. And if you combine both of those, you're going to be pretty solid.
Right. No, that's fantastic. Good stuff. I used to sell the securities like yourself there. And you said you're realtors, and who I called on the most were farmers, because they were all self-employed, of course, so talking to that. But when you sit down and you're making a plan or what it may be, it's not just you and the CPA or you and the financial advisor and or what it may be. It's just oftentimes when you're trying to do something holistically for a client, that you'd have yourself, your CPA, or actually, no, you'd have yourself, your financial planner or advisor over there, then the CPA to overlook that, and then you have an attorney on the other side, and then wrap it up. So all everything is covered, because there's so many things that are going on. Unfortunately, we always try to piecemeal all that together, and on our own, being our own everything. But the left hand, obviously, or most of the time, doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So that's great advice. You'd mentioned too, we talked before, but you talk about you work with realtors and such and small businesses, and you talked a little bit about cash flow, and I want to kind of get into that a little bit. And we've been in kind of, we're in the tax industry, and so we're kind of used to that seasonality of cash flows. Realtors right now, they're having a tough time, so their cash flow. How would you? What do you tell people that have a difficult time with their cash flows, or how do you say you help them manage their cash flows and such, or what kind of advice would you give individuals that are in seasonality or they have the ups and downs in their cash flows?
Yeah, I think one of the things that sets me apart is I've paid a lot of attention to my own cash flow over the last 8 years, and so I know exactly what it's like to go a month and make $0, but I also know exactly what it's like to go a month and make 90 grand. So it just depends on, there have to be certain basic fundamental budgeting skills that we have to build for people so that they can achieve their personal financial goals and also do any meaningful long-term planning. Because you're always, if we look at the real estate industry, you're always 2023 away from, having to let an employee go or, not contribute to your retirement or, have to cut personal expenses because the market shifted. And so, it's really basic stuff like living within your means. What does that mean? Right. Like, structuring your business so that your income is, do you have any W-2 verified income? So whenever you go to apply for a mortgage or whatever, you're not really stretching and getting the worst deal possible you can get. Like, what are just some basic things that you can do to make sure that you're living well within your means? And, if you have a surplus, great, go celebrate. But I think that people get used to making a certain amount of money as self-employed, and they just assume that it's going to keep going up every year. And they actually base their life's financial decisions on that. Where I tend to be, I'm a pessimist just by nature. And so that helps me a lot as an investor, as a financial advisor, and as a self-employed individual, because I've always thought about what could go wrong. Like, what are the 1,000 things that could possibly go wrong? And how do I bulletproof myself from all of them? And so in exploring a lot of that, that's basically what I get into when it comes to cash flow management and stuff, is just make sure that, you don't want to make $100,000, which most people would consider a relatively successful year for an average agent or whatever. You don't want to make 100 grand and then not be able to pay the IRS, or you didn't pay your quarterly taxes, or you didn't budget and now you're broke. But it's like, you've made 100 grand. So just basic stuff.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I remember years ago, and that reminds me of a story that I had. I was in the National Guard, and we were driving around a neighborhood and saw these most beautiful castle houses or whatever. And I asked my friend that was with me. I remember his name was Peter. I said, "What kind of people live in those kinds of houses?" And he says, "People that aren't in them."
Yeah,
they're always working.
Yeah.
You'll never notice a car in front.
That's funny.
That's funny. Yeah.
So
if you're running into the folks, your typical prospects or folks that come in seeking your advice, are they at square one? I mean, they kind of don't have anything yet or a plan in place, or I'm sure you're getting some that already have something, you take over management of it, but though, is it a lot of times folks that don't have anything set up yet?
It's honestly, it's a smorgasbord, man. I mean, our industry, I hate this about our industry, but we don't cater to the little guy. We really don't. It's hard for an advisor to actually be profitable by the hour to work with someone who's at square one. It's just not worth their time. Most advisors, unless you're moving $250,000, they don't want to hear you speak. Right. And so I needed to have, if I'm truly going to serve this industry, I need to have an option for it. So our broker dealer is kind of cool because they actually have it set up where I can do fee for service. So like, I literally met with someone this week who's at square one. They don't have any invested assets, just started in real estate like 2 weeks ago. Don't even have an LLC set up yet. And they're kind of just trying to get their feet under them. And I gave them kind of a high level of just, here's all the different things you need to consider. I can do an intro to this person. And then, I can just bill them for the hour and they get value from it. I'm not shorted anything because I got compensated for that hour. And so it really just depends on what the person needs. I work with a lot of people who are at square one trying to get things set up the right way and learn the right skills. And then I work with a lot of people who are at square 4, 5, or 6 who were just trying to really optimize and that's where a lot of the tax optimization planning comes in.
Yeah. So on that, those that are just getting started, it's great that you have the ability to consult with them, kind of give them that roadmap or everything. But what are some things, and I'm not asking for investment advice or go pick this stock or invest in this fund, but what are 2 or 3 things that you would tell? Because that's what a lot of our listeners are, man. They're either just getting started, they're young in business, they might not have the extra cash flow because they're reinvesting into their business to set aside. But what should they start doing now for when they get to that where they're doing $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year in net profit, and now they've got significant exposure? What should they start doing now to make that habitual?
I would say like kind of some of the same things that I started to do as I kind of came up is, I lived well within my means and I at least invested something. I did something at the end of the year to make it feel like I moved the ball forward. Because what a lot of people don't understand, and we do a lot of consulting on like debt payments and stuff, is compound interest is the key. If you're 25, 30 years old getting into a business and you got 30 or 40 years to accumulate assets, the faster you get 100, 200,000 into those assets, the higher your balance is going to be in 30 or 40 years. And so, really, really pay attention to, paying yourself first. I think there's a book like Profit First or something like that. You pay yourself first. You make sure that you've got what you need to pay your bills, to have a future. And then, if there is a surplus, we can get into playing and stuff like that. But, and the person today I was talking to, I don't think that they'll make enough this year to really have a surplus to put into investments. I told them they needed to build a cash reserve, their first year, build 6 months of cash.
I know Kyle's chopping at the bit to ask a question. Let me just make one point on this. One point on this, and it knocked it to the forefront of my brain is, they don't have enough money to invest, but they need to start doing something. But a lot of times it's the small business owner, and a lot of them listening to this show, a lot of them that we consult with and do planning with. The number one tax planning tactic for those guys is, let's go out and buy an $80,000, $90,000 truck when we're clearing about $50,000 in the business. Why? Because it doesn't cost me jack shit up front to buy that $90,000 truck, but you got a $1,500 a month payment. So you're telling me you can't get started on a financial plan, right? You can't start planning and putting it away because that interest, that everything you're spending out of your pocket on that note, that 7-10 year note on a $90,000 truck that provides you no return on investment unless you need it for your business, which most, if we're being honest, most don't need it. They could do just as well with the 10-year-old truck.
100%.
But they're putting all of that interest to the bank instead of putting that interest towards their future. And that's what gets me. Hey, let's do tax planning. Should I buy that truck?
Mm-hmm.
That's not planning, bro.
Yeah.
That's not.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Those are some of the decisions that could come up that agents ask. They'll send me, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you think it's a good idea? And sometimes I'm like, yeah, it doesn't really matter. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's not smart. Like, you can do this 3 other ways that's way less expensive, and then you still have that money. So, yeah, that's good you mentioned that.
Yeah, I recall I'm being told one time when I was a financial advisor is that our competition isn't the Edward Jones and the Charles Schwab or whatever it may be across the street. Our competition is the people that sell campers, boats, ATVs, hot tubs. That's your competition, and then it's you. And I'm glad you put that in there as far as giving you margin. And I think it really starts there as far as limiting, living within your means and having. And I like what you did say there is rather than putting money if you're not that person that can't maybe put money into an investment right now, at least you need to start putting it into that sinking or that fund or a reserve fund for 6 months. So when things do turn down or there is on a downturn, because it's going to happen, it's just everything is cyclical.
Sure.
It's just when is it coming for you? And if you can't, if you bought that truck versus putting it in a reserves, things don't look so good. So no, that's great advice. And I was just going to say, now you said you're in your 8th year doing that, and I've been in the insurance world, a number of different times, and it's a tough world, type of thing out there. And I know, do you go to work with daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, and that, we haven't touched on that much yet, but I just want to see, I mean, you've been successful. You're in your 8th year, and you got to be doing things right. But were goals a big thing for you? And were they daily, weekly, monthly? What did that look like for you, Dalton?
Yeah, all of it. So I have a daily activity tracker. There's things that I have to do every day. Like, for instance, I ask one person for a referral every day. It could be on social media. It could be a friend. It could be a client. I'm doing an annual review with somebody. I could ask them. But I have to ask at least one person. Statistically, that should get me 5 to 10 referrals a month. And then I know my close rate or whatever on those referrals. Social media. So I do a lot on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I have Sales Navigator for LinkedIn, so I can identify like target prospects, and I can just send a bunch of connection requests. So, every month I try to send around 100 connection requests. And then I try to engage with like 4 or 5 posts a day. So just leave a comment or a like or something on 4 or 5 posts a day. I stay active in social media groups. And so, I'm always looking for people looking for an advisor or this or that or whatever. I spend probably half my time hunting. I mean, that's very, very, very serious part of any business. And, I've always been very goal oriented and very focused. The reason I've been able to build as quickly as I've built, but also as sustainably, is because I take my business very, very seriously. I do not let my guard down.
Right. And I once in a while I get stuck in the office or whatever, and I was just I was in the office yesterday, for instance, and it was like I knew I had to spend 20-30% of my time actually progressing the business going forward rather than just being in the activities all day. And I think that's where a lot of us get caught. You always got to stay on the offense. Another little story, like Chad, he referred a financial advisor over to me about 8 years ago. I think was his name Chad or whatever it was. And he came over and he sat just cute little story. He sat at the kitchen table and he asked for a referral at the end. I said, think about it or whatever it was. And I couldn't come up with it or whatever. And a couple of days had passed or whatever. And I said, I hadn't seen any referrals out there from you. But here I see that you're friends with, or you're connected with Chad on LinkedIn, and here are 10 other people that you're associated with in LinkedIn. Do you know these people, or can I get an introduction?
Mm-hmm.
I said, that was fabulous that he had the wherewithal in order to do that. I mean, it was very unique that he did. And I couldn't say no. I mean, so I gave him introductions, and that's where it went from there. So I thought that was a remarkable way of approaching that. That guy, they taught me something. So.
Yeah, that's an old Northwestern trick.
And that's exactly who he was with, man. He brought a printout. He brought a printout.
Oh yeah.
Contact and said, "Hey, how well do you know this guy? This guy. Hey,
no, it helps that I work with
post right now or something.
Yeah, it helps that I work with realtors because it's really easy. Like, hey, do you know any pretty successful realtors? I would just love them to have them in my network. I'm not going to try and sell them anything. I'll buy them a coffee and just connect with them.
And they're always willing to talk to you. I mean, they're always want to know who their next prospect are, and they want to create relationships, and just like we all do. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, before we wrap up this episode, I'm going to go completely over here.
Okay. I guess we're going.
And all that stuff. Now, I've known you on social media. I believe we're in Arte together, right, Dalton? Mm-hmm. And you briefly mentioned your discipline and consistency of just working and grinding. doing daily things, daily habits. That discipline. I think I've seen you post some fitness stuff that you've been involved in historically or in the past. I shouldn't say historically; it makes you sound really old. But in the past, competing at a high level is. Tell us a little bit about that and how that because that's a very disciplined process.
Yeah. I used to compete in bodybuilding, and so I did bodybuilding contests, like physique contests. I did that for probably from like 2013. I tried to do a little comeback a couple years ago, but I just it's a lot to deal with, a lot of discipline. But exercise has always been something that I can kind of apply to being disciplined in business. And right now I do CrossFit with my wife. And, if you look at like a long CrossFit workout, like Murph, you're halfway through the workout and you're just dying. You're like, this sucks. I just want to quit. But you're just like, just one push-up at a time, one pull-up at a time, one squat at a time, one breath at a time. And before you know it, you'll be over. And it seems like you blink and then an hour's passed. Right. So business is the same. It's one email at a time, one call at a time, one task at a time. And you kind of chip away at it like you do a really long, crappy workout. And so I just like fitness. And
that's what I had yesterday, long, crappy workout.
Yeah. I like fitness, and I like challenging my body and just pushing through stuff. It's fun for me.
Yeah. No, and that's a great approach. I like that. Please just keep on chipping away. And chip away, and it's day by day. I never thought I'd get through basic training, but I remember when my brother told me you just took it one day at a time, and then you get through that day, and then you get up the next day and you do it all over again. So you just keep.
I think one of the things that all of us do. I mean, I think it's human nature to look out here in the future, or all this big bubble and all these opportunities and everything we've got to do, the tasks we got to do, the people we got to please, all this stuff, and it's just this bubble and it's this noise. Until you can kind of bring it back in here and focus on that chip, one step at a time. Eventually, you're done with that marathon if you take one step at a time. But we get the distraction, the noise out here, wanting to be there by a certain time or achieve this by a certain time instead of just doing the work, which will get you there quicker. So anyway, good stuff. Hey, Dalton, if people want to look you up, maybe talk to you a little bit more about how they can get started budgeting, cash flowing, kind of some next steps that you would recommend them taking to get in contact with you to see how they can get involved into, start the process of investing, or if those are out there that, they're not confident that their advisor's working on their behalf as well as they'd like, how'd they get in touch with you?
I mean, they can connect with me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. They could email me. So it's dcampbell at anchor and then a financial.com. It's my business email. I have a business cell line through my rep chat. And so that's 540-534-2811. Those are probably the most common ways people reach out. And I'm usually very fast to reply. So yeah.
Good.
Kyle, you got any final words here before we wrap this thing up?
No, that was wonderful to have you on, Dalton. Maybe we can do this again sometime. I think you have a lot more to discover, and we continue to grow. And I think we're kind of in the same boat, working together, trying to, help small businesses grow, and such, and making the right plans out there. So good job. Appreciate everybody today.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody, make sure you go check Dalton out. He's a wealth of knowledge and information. So check him out. Social, LinkedIn, his email, dcampbell at anchor-financial.com. And thanks again for tuning into the KB article. Our focus is helping those that we serve optimize their financial health and their growth and financial well-being. So I know we definitely did that today. Dalton hit on some key nuggets, but the key is with anything, get started, do something. If you're not where you want to be, you got to change what you're doing currently. And hey, if you like this episode, you found it valuable, share it, share, tell your friends about it. I think it's a message everybody needs to hear. And that's how we continue to grow and get the message out. So until next time, we'll talk to you again.
See you later.